Lord Inquisitor here. Welcome to the introductory video for the Nova Open GT series of battle reports. I'm going to be using this video so that I can show off my army list first without doing it for each video. And also I'm going to use it to talk a little bit about the specific scenario and rule changes particular to this event. While there are some interesting aspects to this tournament in terms of rule changes, in terms of comp, it's zero comp, so anything goes. So this is an ogre list with no restrictions whatsoever. So first of all, I have my Tyrant. So going through his equipment here, he's heavy armor and Iron Fist, together with the Dragon Helm. That gives him a 3+ armor save. So that's about as good as you're going to get for an ogre. So he has a Sword of Striking. That'll give him +1 to hit. That means against most things, anything weapon skill 5 or lower, he's hitting on 2s. And then the Greedy Fist gives him +1 strength, so he'll be hitting on 2s with strength 6. In addition to that, the Greedy Fist, it's a ogre-specific item. It gives you a 6+ ward save, which I don't use very often. I like with the ogres to try and get regeneration on there, which is why he doesn't have a 4+ ward or anything like that. And anything that's flaming will get stopped by the Dragon Helm, which gives a 2+ ward against flaming. But occasionally that 6+ ward save does come in useful, and there is a special rule where if you make that 6+ ward save against someone who's attacking you with a magic weapon, that destroys their magic weapon. It doesn't happen very often. A few notable ones have destroyed the Destroyer of Eternities, the Tomb King heroic killing blow weapon. I've killed Archaean Slayer of Kings magic weapon, so very rare, but funny when it happens. And lastly, the Greedy Fist also, every hit I inflict on a wizard strips a magic level. So in most cases, a wizard hit by my general is a dead wizard, but it's useful against things like vampires or demon princes where they actually outclass him in combat. But you know, if he can get a few good hits in, he can strip their magic levels away at least. And lastly, the other Trickster Shard, which I think is one of the best items in the game. It forces the enemy to re-roll ward saves. So if they have a successful ward save, they must re-roll it. So I love that item. It's always an unpleasant surprise. I have my BSB. He has very simply a great weapon and crown of command. That's it. He has a lookout nobbler on there that allows my characters, if they need to jump into another unit. It's not very likely. They're most likely going to stay in my Death Star. I used to run this guy decked up to fight in the front rank, but Crown of Command is really so valuable to me that I like to keep him in the second rank. So typically he will sit in the second rank of an ogre unit. He'll only get 3 attacks instead of his full 4, but that's not a great problem. I have been running him with the Runemaw magic banner quite a lot recently, especially for the ETC style tournament. But for this, I decided that a Dispel Scroll and a Hellheart would be enough, so I didn't go with the Runemaw. Now here's my 2 wizards. I have a level 4 Slaughtermaster. It's a bit of an old picture. He's had his base done in the same style as the others now, but and he's very cheap. The reason he's cheap is that between him and the Tyrant, I'm pushing up against the limit of my Lord allowance. So he simply has an extra hand weapon, a Dragonbane Gem, which is 2+ Fire Ward, and a Dispel Scroll. I'll talk about the Dragonbane Gem in just a moment. I have a cunning plan with the Ogre Shell game. Then I have my level 1 Heaven's Butcher. I normally like to have him as a level 2. I love getting the Comet of Cassandora spell, but then the signature is very, very useful for a low-level wizard. But in this case, I really wanted to include some man-eaters in my list, and I was pinching points from everywhere. And one of the places where I had to trim the fat was my level 2 upgrade. He has a great weapon, and he has the Hellheart. So the Hellheart is another ogre-specific magic item. If you haven't heard of this or had the misfortune to be on the receiving end of this, the Hellheart is activated at the beginning of the opponent's magic phase. After they've rolled for dice, so I can see how many dice you've got, how many channels you've got, then I can choose to activate the Hellheart. I roll a dice multiplied by 5, so somewhere between 5 and 30, and all enemy wizards within that range in inches take an immediate miscast. And what this will normally do is if I hit at least one wizard, it will completely wreck their magic phase, because almost all miscast results remove d6 dice from the pool. And especially if I can hit 2 wizards, then their magic phase is over. This is especially useful for enemies that have multiple low-level wizards. So, for example, a light choir, or a beastman herdstone build, or vampire invocation spam. That sort of build where they rely on an awful lot of low-level wizards to spam a single spell over and over again is extremely vulnerable to this Hellheart. So I have a unit of Iron Guts. This is my main Death Star unit. I only have 9. It's quite a lot smaller than your average 0 comp Death Star unit. You often see these units with 15 ogres plus the 3 characters making a full horde of Iron Guts. And these are very nasty. I faced one of these last year at the Nova Open, and it beat me. It was undeniably very useful. The advantage of the smaller unit is it's a little more maneuverable, and you can play what I call the Ogre Shell game, which is the front rank has a champion, a musician, and a standard in there. That means the characters go in the second rank. At the start of combat, I can choose, if I want to use Make Way and push my characters to the front rank. Potentially, I can put 3 characters at the front rank, in which case the enemy have to allocate their attacks against each individual character. It's going to be very hard to put all their attacks on one character, especially with magic buffs up. So, tough 5 characters. If I can get the +1 toughness spell, that's tough 6, or I can get the regeneration. It makes it very, very difficult to deal with them. Alternatively, if I end up against something I absolutely do not want to be in base contact with, I am under no obligation to move my characters forward if I want to. So if I'm up against something with Mind Razor, I can just sit my characters back until Mind Razor disappears and then push them forward. Another neat trick is that I have 2 characters with Fire Wards, you may have noticed from the list of characters. What I can do, for example, if I go up against something like a Kadai Destroyer, and there were a few Chaos Dwarf lists at this tournament, I can leave the unit champion at the front and then push the 2 characters with Fire Wards up, in which case his choice is unit champion, in which case you can't get more than 3 wounds off the champion, and then 2 characters with 2+ Fire Wards. So any unit with flaming attacks, any unit carrying the Banner of Eternal Flame, I like nothing better to see a Death Star with a Banner of Eternal Flame, because my Death Star will take it apart. I normally like to run the +1 movement banner on these guys, but again, I was pinching points. In this case, I was running 2 small units of Bulls. These fill out my minimum core, but they're also extraordinarily useful little units. They have shields. The Iron Fists count as shields. They also have a musician in each unit, but that's it. No banners or champions. They're fast. They can outfight any other small chaff unit. In this particular competition also, we needed to have scoring units for, which is to say a core unit of, in this case, at least 2 ogres. So these units were able to go into the enemy deployment zone and that sort of thing. I have a unit of Mournfang. I have a musician, a standard, no unit champion. They have a Gleaming Pennant. With the Mournfang, there's 2 banners I really like. There's the Gleaming Pennant, and then there's the Dragonhide banner. The Dragonhide banner allows them to reroll 1s to hit, to wound, and armor save when they charge. It is extremely nasty, but at the same time, their big weakness is they're only leadership 7, and they're very fast, and they have a tendency to get outside the general's bubble, in which case they're very vulnerable to panic and terror and so on. So the Gleaming Pennant helps out a lot with that, and it's a lot cheaper. Again, I was trying to save points for my man-eaters. Speaking of which, these are my man-eaters. This is a small unit, only 3. They have a brace of pistols. So in this case, I'm representing it with a minigun, but they count as having 2 ogre pistols, so they're like Empire pistols, but with double the range. They use handguns like pistols. So there's 2 shots each, and they ignore movement penalties when they're firing. So it's a useful unit for a scouting, a useful ability for a scouting unit. They have a Banner of Eternal Flame, and then Scout and Poison attacks. So that means when I can place them last after I've seen where the enemy's going to put his Demon Prince, Chimeras, Hydra, that sort of thing. And then they even a small unit puts out 6 shots a turn, and any 6s will wound automatically. So the idea for this unit really is, first of all, they're as a scouting unit. Usually I don't put them way out to threaten the enemy. Even with Leadership 8, they're too vulnerable to panic. So I try to keep them close to my main lines, unless there's something really important that I want to threaten, like a war machine or something. They have flaming attacks, so 1 wound on a regenerating monster takes away their regeneration. I can then hit that monster with one of my cannons. And it gives me some ballistic skill shooting just in case I run up against a Demon Prince. Problem with Demon Princes is that they come with the Charm Shield almost invariably, and the Charm Shield works against the first hit, so it doesn't matter what kind of weapon is used. So if I can pop a few shots off with these guys, they're not likely to hurt a Demon Prince. Demon Prince usually has a Fire Ward, but all I'm looking to do is strip that Charm Shield before I hit it with the Iron Blaster. I have 3 single Saber Tusks. This is very much a staple for Ogre lists. These are enormously useful units. The downside is they're only leadership 4, and they will panic at the drop of a hat. They can't use a general or BSB. So I have to keep them more than 6 inches away from the other units. I don't want them to cause panic in the main Ogre units. I don't want anything else to panic the cats. Otherwise they're gone and they're not coming back. So I've gotten quite good at keeping those distances right, but there's still an art to using the Saber Tusk. And lastly, my 2 Iron Blasters. So this probably comes as no surprise. The 2 Iron Blasters are extremely useful, especially now that the Warriors of Chaos have really increased the number of cannon vulnerable units available. I mean, I was expecting a lot of Warriors of Chaos at this tournament. As it turned out, there was a huge number of Warriors of Chaos armies. In each one of those is going to have a Demon Prince, a whole bunch of chariots, probably 2 or 3 Chimera. Cannons are very useful against this sort of thing. So 2 Iron Blasters was, if anything, more of a must than usual. Okay, so that's my army list. Now let's talk a little bit about the Nova Open scenario construction. The way it worked, there was only one scenario, and that scenario was played 6 times. However, the scenario had a number of interesting little facets. First of all, it was obviously a victory point system. There was no draw in the system. So if you got 1 victory point more than your opponent, then you get a minor win. What exactly happens if they both get the same number of victory points exactly? I don't know. I don't think it ever happened in the event. But in any case, a massacre win is quite a lot of points. You really needed to obliterate the enemy without any casualties to be able to get to that sort of point level. So there is one scenario, but it had a number of different elements based in it. Each of the tables was more or less the same, and it was roughly speaking built on as I've put in this diagram here. There were 2 hills, 2 buildings, and 2 woods. And the 2 buildings were impassable. You were not allowed to garrison the building, so we didn't have to deal with the building assault rules whatsoever. Of these 2 buildings, before deployment, we randomized and picked one of these 2 buildings was then a watchtower. And the watchtower objective was satisfied as long as you had a unit within 6 inches, but it had to be a core unit and non-flying. So in addition to the points that you would get from the win-loss, you'd also get these additional points. But these were points for the tournament scoring, not victory points. So these points were quite valuable. The most you could get was 16 points for a total massacre, but you could get up to 8 points from the objective points, whether you won or you lost. So 2 points went to the watchtower, 2 points for fortitude. So if you broke your enemy, you got 2 points. And even if the enemy broke you, you could still get those points later on. So those points were available for both players. There was another 2 points for Battle for the Past. So this involved getting a unit. It had to be a core unit. It had to be unit strength 5. So in my case, 2 ogres. It had to be in the enemy deployment zone. And the last one was Bounty. And the way this worked was there was 1 point for killing the enemy general and 1 point for killing the enemy's most expensive unit. In many cases, this was the same unit, in which case you simply get 2 points for killing them. Lastly, there were a number of rule changes that were in effect for this tournament. By far, the biggest was abstract line of sight. So the hills and the towers blocked line of sight completely. Particularly for the hills, this was a big deal. And there was a sort of height categorization system. There was height 1, height 2, height 3, different units. So, ogres were height 2, I think. Then Born Fang were height 3. And then anything that was a large target was height 4. And the nice thing for ogres is that Iron Blasters are considered a large target, which meant I could freely fire over my own units whether I could actually draw line of sight or not. Fleeing units were counted as destroyed, so anything fleeing at the end of the game counted as destroyed. This is somewhat new to me. I normally, a lot of tournaments will say, half points for fleeing units, that sort of thing. But they counted as destroyed. You got 50% victory points for units under half. This also included monsters or characters under half wounds. And there were a number of magic changes that were fairly commonplace for tournaments around here. Is things like you can't have more than 12 dice a phase. So you can't get 12 dice, throw a purple sun, and then get 12 dice back again. And there were some of the instant death spells like Dwellers only did 1 wound to characters instead of killing them outright. Okay, so that is the scenario. I think it had a number of interesting aspects here. So it did encourage people to take core units that had at least unit strength 5. So especially for Warriors of Chaos, things like you'd see a few blocks of infantry with a banner. I'm surprised people weren't taking Marauder Cav all over the place with a banner, and that's what I would have done. But you did see some effect from that. So in my case, I had the 2 small units that could take either the watchtower or attempt to get into the enemy deployment zone for Battle for the Pass. And these points were achievable by both players, except for the watchtower, which only one player could get. So there wasn't a huge incentive to try and stop your enemy from getting into your deployment zone, because it would deny him those points, but it didn't get you any points. Okay, so that's the tournament introduction. I'm going to start with the first battle report in the very next video.